So welcome to Asea 5. We have a great program tonight with Dr. Carolyn Hoffman. We'll get to her in a moment, but let me just make sure everybody knows who's in the house. We have Dr. Jim Glenn. He is a doctor of finance.
My dad was a doctor.
There you go. We do have a Dr. Glenn, don't we?
Yes.
And Ann Glenn, nutritionist expert. So they're from San Antonio, Texas, and we love having them to help anchor this. We also have co-hosting with us tonight, filling in for Dr. Maureen Hayes, who's out with her family, Dr. Ray Dixon, who is I was going to say notorious, but he has great notoriety as a naturopath and a chiropractor from Australia and now living in Phuket, Thailand. Our guest tonight is Dr. Carolyn Hoffman, who is a naturopath by training, and now devoting her time, I believe, exclusively to educating people about Redox and helping them understand kind of how their body really works. And so, Carolyn, we'd like to start off with maybe you weighing in. If you could tell us your story, kind of how this started for you, where it began, and why you even took a serious look at this, or maybe even how long it took you before you did take a serious look at this. If you could go there and kind of bring us up to speed, and we'll go from there.
I want to ask real quick, Carolyn, you've got more initials after your name than anyone else. What the heck do all those mean? I couldn't put them on your title because we would have run out of room.
That's okay. So one is naturopathic doctor. So I'm a traditional naturopath, so I don't deal with the drugs. The other one is I'm a digestive health specialist. So that's enzyme therapy. And that's my biggest passion and where I kind of really booted myself into this. And the other one is lymphatic therapy, also natural health. I have a whole bunch of other stuff. But you know what? I mean, at the end of the day, they're just tools in the toolbox, because when you're a naturopath, it's all about, I think, matches perfectly what we're talking about today, is that the body's designed to heal. And that's the premise of naturopathy. Not that we have a deficiency in aspirin and all those other drugs that may or may not serve us. But, you know, just this innate system that we're built with, that the body is there to actually heal and keep healthy, and kind of gets out of balance with time. So for me, my journey was, I think probably, I don't know, it would be kind of interesting to remind me about Ray's journey into this, but I find a lot of naturopaths often end up in this field because they've been prompted by some kind of personal health crisis and found themselves in a situation where the medical field not really supporting them, not giving them the answers that they want, always being left with physical challenges that really impede your life, and maybe, you know, your mental function, your sense of wellness, and just being alert and happy with things. And so for me, that was my entree into this. I had my previous career, which led me to that point, was actually in professional dance. And in that journey, I ended up having a car accident that ultimately injured my neck and took away that career, leaving me in this kind of 8 to 10 year area where no one could give me any solutions, but I lived constantly in an enormous amount of discomfort with a huge amount of things that I couldn't do. And I guess I was kind of lucky, because at one point they were going to operate on my neck, and we decided to come down to UVA for a second opinion from Dr. Jane, the senior Dr. Jane, who'd worked on Christopher Reeve, and he was actually going to operate on my neck. And they did all these tests, and I came out of the test, and he said, I'm not going to operate on it. He said, it would actually make it worse for you. He said, but you'll have to live the rest of your life with physical therapy. I was like, I don't have a life. Jim, I know that you have a huge amount of discomfort, you know, and you're popping pills left, right, and center, and it's not solving problems. But the long and short of it was, I kind of lived with that for a while. I was not natural health minded. I will be very clear about that. You know, I didn't come from that background. I'd lived with my mother, having had serious head operations from the Asian flu and osteomyelitis of the frontal sinuses back in the 50s. And medicine was the thing that saved her. And so doctors were kind of normal for me. And as a dancer, being part of the orthopedic field and the physical therapist, I mean, that was kind of where it went in the 70s and 80s. Pilates had just about kind of entered my life a little bit, before things fell apart. So my being alternative was as much as going to a chiropractor and seeing a massage therapist when I finally ended up in the States. I mean, that was kind of as alternative as I got. But I don't know, there are these moments in life when things happen and you make a decision and something changes. And that decision was actually not prompted by me. It was prompted by my husband, who had a client who worked in the OR department at UVA, who was into magnetic therapy. And he shared with my husband a way to solve a problem with a wrist that he was suffering from. And I have to say, I thought everybody was totally crazy. My mother's getting benefits from this and no longer having headaches after 40 years, and everybody's kind of seeing energy. And I'm looking at them like they're wildly peculiar. How does a magnet make any difference? But it was that experience and going through the next 6 months of things that finally turned my life around. And ironically, I realized when I finally got into working with clients that I actually did have fibromyalgia, but back in the 80s, people weren't really diagnosing that other than you were kind of crazy. And once I got better, I realized that, wow, it wasn't a drug that got me better. My body made that change. And if I can get better, then I can at least share information with people. So having come from the teaching arena as well, it was kind of natural for me to share information. And I just was always compassionate with people that I felt was struggling and didn't have control of how to be healthy and stay healthy. And doctors were not giving them solutions. So that was kind of a natural piece for me. So I guess that opened up my mind. And I think, how did Asea come to me? I guess it's just that we have to be open at the right moment, don't we? When information comes along. And Lee, you kind of alluded to the fact that even though I was on this 20-year journey of always looking for what's the newest in science, what is this latest thing on the market that can help people, because I was just accumulating knowledge and tools. In 2011, when somebody showed the Asea to me, which was pretty early on, and we didn't really have very much science to kind of back up what it does, I didn't pay any attention to it, even though I was always looking at new products and analyzing nutrition, because that was really where I had been mostly focused. So it wasn't until 2017 that I ended up meeting, by coincidence, another mother from high school kind of connections, who invited me to learn about this. And I'll be honest, if I hadn't really misunderstood what she said, I probably wouldn't have been at this point either. I didn't really hear clearly what she was saying. And so I got into learning about Asea. And I was, as we all know, those of us who've been using it, the gel technology, the application of the gel for the physical application of it is very powerful for things that can be challenging and hurt or don't work so well. And it was watching people at an event where I went to learn about it that caught my attention. That made me then go deeper. And I had 2 experiences that really made me realize that this is different. This is doing things in a way that nothing else I had ever used had been able to achieve. And one is with my husband and his 22-year experience with not being able to breathe and exercise at the same time adequately, and watching that change in 2 weeks in ways that made me scratch my head and say, okay, why? Why is this doing this in this way when I've been through so many other things with him, and they'd never really made that kind of a shift in such a short time? That got my curiosity, and we all go through reading books. I started reading the books and scratching my head and wondering, was this different? Did I need it? Where did it fit? And then I began to think, maybe this is the missing link. That missing link that can connect everything together and empower people to improve whatever else they're choosing to use. And that next step was actually watching someone who was referred to me who'd had 3 experiences over 30 years with autoimmune challenges due to insect bites. And that really propelled me across the stage, so to speak, to start to really deeply dive into this, because in 30 days, that woman had like a 90% turnaround in her health that she struggled with for 30 years. And it was just so profound and so unexpected that it was really confirmation to me that I had my hands on something very unique. And it was like, okay, I got to find out much more, who's using this, why they're using it, what is the outcome for practitioners. And so I made the point of actually going to an event where I could start to talk to other doctors and see what their experiences were.
So in follow up for that, what would you say to people who kind of come from that same direction of initial skepticism, ignorance, sometimes innocent ignorance or whatever? How would you help them if they're looking at this now or later? How do they get to that point where they're open-minded and they kind of set the conventional things aside and be more open-minded?
Yeah, I think, some of that is probably going to depend upon where they are in their journey towards being motivated to want to look at something else. I mean, I think if you have people like I was originally who, hadn't considered the notion that the body has the capacity to heal on its own anyway, and we're not healed by the drugs, let's face it. I think that is a personal challenge, and you may meet people at the point where they're not ready for that. I think very often when we get to the point that maybe we are personally challenged with something that we're struggling with, that's debilitating our life, and we don't get answers left, right, and center, and nobody can find a solution. I think sometimes then people come to the point like, well, as recently I had somebody who said, well, what have I got to lose? I think that will open a door. But in general terms, I think it's important to kind of help people understand that our body is designed to promote health. It's not designed to promote sickness, right? I mean, this inbuilt immune system that people are at least familiar with that word is this search and rescue mechanism that helps the body detect when there's a problem and put it to right. In other words, this self-healing process that is an inbuilt part of who we are. And I think what's exciting is I've actually recently in the last month or so felt like, how many times do we see when we actually rebuild these signals with the Redox technology that we watch things that we think are miraculous, right? How many people say, well, it feels like a miracle. How can it help somebody with their breathing, and yet it can help somebody with their knees, and it can help somebody with a digestive problem or a cardiovascular problem? But that's beautiful because we aren't any longer thinking symptoms, we're thinking cells. And when we get to the foundation of the fact that every cell is this amazing community of communication, both internally and across the cells, it's like us. Communication is essential. Good communication produces good outcomes. So when we have a healing mechanism that gets a hiccup, it's basically because that conversation broke down. It's no different than a well-run business. If you have communication that breaks down across departments, the businesses fall apart as well, and so do we. And that's just really a reference, an example of the fact that cellular breakdown creates dis-ease somewhere, wherever it is. But I think the beautiful thing about this is that we can stop thinking symptoms and just encourage people to understand that we are going to be able to help support the body rebuild what it was built on. I mean, we all come into this world in this perfect, hopefully perfect state. I mean, not every child does, but we are designed to heal from birth. And, we're really just going to support that process. Encourage people to realize that, we don't need drugs to exist in a healthy state.
It's awesome what you said as far as don't think about symptoms, think about unhealthy cells. And Ray, that ties into what you said last week, that when you start on this technology, sit back and wait and expect miracles. And I think that just may be what carries this thing into the world is that people are going to hear that they got their life back, they got their health back. Didn't cure, didn't treat, didn't diagnose anything, right, Lee? Why don't you go ahead and throw that in real quick?
Yeah, we want to make sure that everybody who's watching now or later understands this is not about diagnosing, treating, or naming specific diseases. This is a supplement that is authorized to be used in that fashion. And I think Dr. Carolyn exemplified the whole concept a few minutes ago with, this is about how the body heals itself, and we're just giving it the right information to be able to do that.
That's awesome.
Cool.
I was recently watching your, and in fact, I sent it to somebody today. The little YouTube, it's like 3 to 4 minutes where you titled Redox Discovery. And so maybe you can, in a nutshell, synopsis that and why this discovery is so much bigger than the nutrition world or really anything else people do, because it is foundational to all living organisms. So maybe you can just dip into that for a minute.
Yeah, I mean, why is it so much more important? I've spent those 20 odd years looking at supplements because I guess that was really, I think, to coin what Dr. Ward would say, vitamins and minerals were the discoveries of 100 years ago. And now we're in this new field, which is much bigger, much more influential. And I think that in the same way that people look at drugs, they'll think about a drug for cholesterol or a drug for diabetes or whatever. That's kind of symptom driven. And there's this very limited mindset in how we work in supporting ourselves. So people will often say they want to get off the drug, and then they try to find a nutritional supplement to replace that. Here, we can actually stop thinking about all of those particular symptoms because they're just references to the fact that, we've got dysfunction in the lungs if we're not breathing too well. We've got dysfunctional cells in the cardiovascular system if we've got arrhythmia. All they are is a reflection. Those symptoms are a reflection of conversations not working properly and damaged cells not being heard. Here's what I love about this is, first off, we're in an arena that no one else has done before. I mean, and this is, I love to just remind people that, because very often people kind of get into the space, I think that they think we created Redox, right? We didn't discover or create Redox. That's God's inbuilt operating system for the human body. We come into the world because of it. We'll go out when we don't make as much of it. And in between, there's this space. And that's going to and how much we have and how well it operates is going to determine how healthy or unhealthy we are. But we have this amazing opportunity for the first time to tune it up and do something about it, which we've never had before. And this is a science that was awarded originally a Nobel Prize back in 1998 for establishing and just naming one of the redox molecules, nitric oxide, and its benefit for cardiovascular health. But even that is a later development of discoveries back in the 70s, that these are signaling molecules within our cells that are generated all the time out of the energy production. That science, because it wasn't smart enough or clever enough or didn't have the scientific instrumentation to look at these cells that closely, used to think that they were just useless. But by the time we get to the 2000s, everybody knows these are literally essential for you, me, pets, and plants to be alive. And when we stop making them, that's kind of it. The breakthrough is not in the discovery of the fact that they exist, not in the discovery of the fact that they're essential for all of us to do anything, talk at this point in time, but that science was able to make them in little machines, would generate them, but you would have to consume them fairly immediately. They had a very brief lifespan. Within the human body, they're really here and gone in a nanosecond, because they're not material, they're signals. They're like us saying something, we say it and it's gone, we say it and it's gone. And they're working that way as instructions. And it's the stabilization of that and taking something that science has looked at for all these years and knows a lot about, and being able to stabilize them in a bioactive form outside of the human body and break this notion that this was not possible. And now we have suddenly, for the first time in 2007, stabilized redox signaling molecules with a lifespan at that point of about 12 months. Now our science is stronger and it lasts longer. And we're now in a different arena. We don't have to be tied to research. We don't have to be part of a scientific study. We don't have to have a little machine there that makes it and we have to consume it immediately. We're now in an arena where you and I get to decide and control how much do we want to reset that operating system, upgrade that operating system in the human body in the same way that we spend our time updating our cell phones all the time, right? If our cell phones have got old operating system, they don't work very well. That's no different with the body, and aging is that process.
Okay, touch on that new arena thought, because that's what we're dealing with is a category creating technology that, because everything we're saying, again, I'm not the medical person. You guys all have scientific stuff. It sounds crazy. I keep saying that on all these calls, because if you're telling me, Carolyn, that it works on plants, animals, and humans, and it helps all cells, it just sounds absolutely ridiculous. It sounds snake oily. But because it's a whole new cat, right? But that's why we do these kind of calls. And I think that's how this is going to propel into the world. It's going to be purely word of mouth. It's like, hey, I had a lot of back issues. I was addicted to pain pills and I'm not now. Do you want to know how? I mean, if we keep it that simple, do you have to know the science? Now, I love Dr. Lee because he's given us these gifts. But Carolyn, do we have to understand the science behind that, or do we just need to know that it works?
I think we need to tell stories and invite people to become educated about it, learn for themselves, right? Our stories of our experiences are very powerful, and that's the wonderful thing, that we've got lots of resources that if people really want to dive into the science, they can look at, you know, Dr. Osler's books, they can look at all the research that's out there. But no, we don't need to know that. We've got a lot of resources to show people outcomes. You know, it's really kind of interesting because I meet all sorts of practitioners, some who will just, they hear it and they get it. It's like, it's just instinctive. They understand. And just to catch a word there, because I know how people interpret things. You were saying, like, well, how does it work, right? And we think about that, right, that it works. Well, it's already in us in the first place, right? We wouldn't be working if we weren't making these things. With or without Asea, we wouldn't function. So I like not to think of it in terms of the way we might consider that, as in, you know, how does it work? Well, it's already working in every cell within us. It's already working within every cell with an animal, right? Because that's the thing that's, and it's working as part of the process in the plants as well. All we're doing is rebuilding. We probably should go back to that, you know, we have all of these in a great capacity when we're born. But at 15, we start to lose them at 1% per year. So we're dropping at 10% per decade, but, you know, people don't layer on top of that. That makes sense. We start to see external changes, right? Slowly in the beginning, but increasing with time and age. That is a reflection of this loss of signaling mechanism and the fact that these communicators are there to do search and rescue. They're there to identify when we've got damaged cells, to get in the rescue team, the immune system, to, you know, protect the healthy cells, to repair and replace the ones that are not healthy, to signal and improve our genetic expression, because all of that is proven, and to make sure that the adaptive response, the innate immune system, which is the thing that's on alert to prepare the body to defend itself against viruses, bacteria, environmental toxins, is working at peak performance. But I love the visual, just for a second. I know, Joy, you've got another question there for me. I love the visual, right? If you think about an apple, when you buy a nice fresh apple and you just sit it on the counter, eventually what happens is it begins to get brown and collapses in. That didn't start on the outside. The decay started on the inside. And so the wrinkles we have on the outside of our body are simply a reflection of the wrinkles and the decay on the inside. That is the aging process. And when we can have this beautiful ability to replenish, I don't even think of it as supplementing. I think of it as replenishing, refilling our glass, right? We're just giving our body back more of what it had when we were younger, amplifying the way the cells can communicate within and between themselves, empower the search and rescue to be a lot more efficient, right? And combat, because this is the mechanism of redox, the increase of inflammation and allowing that to get out of control and cause dis-ease and damage. So, this is a whole different arena. We can't do that with any single nutritional supplement that is made of materials. You can't do that.
Someone brought up a chat in the chat regarding the science, and I want to ask Dr. Ray, when the gene study came out, because prior to that, we did have some things that Dr. David Neiman did. When the gene study came out, as a medical expert, with all three of you, I'd like for you to answer this. Was that enough? Is that enough of the science to validate that what we have is real? Or do we have to have more? Where do you draw the line and say, this is it, double-blind, placebo, with an independent review board, whatever all that means? I have no idea, but I know that's what it was. But do we have enough of the science already, Dr. Ray?
Well, the first answer is yes, we do. But the real answer lies in what is the ultimate proof. And the ultimate proof will always be you. You decide. Mm-hmm. You'll decide by your results. And that goes back to your original question to Caroline, and that is, how much do we need to know to be introduced, or how to introduce people, and do we need to know the science? So no, you don't need to know the science. And as Carolyn said, you need to share the stories of your results, because it's results that will get people interested. The science is a smokescreen in many respects. It's a distraction for many. And of course, it's the bane of the life for those with health science degrees that can't help themselves, but wanting to know more and more science. So the answer is both. Of course, as science unravels and demonstrates and proves ever more beyond the gene study, as it will, and it's only slowed down temporarily from our product's point of view, because we don't want to talk about disease processes and run double-blind placebo crossover trials, because it pushes us into the medical model, which we do not want to pursue. So really, Caroline and Dr. Lee and Anne, we're always talking the same language. It's just about this alternative universe, this alternative paradigm. It's not new. The vitalistic paradigm of providing the body with what it needs to heal itself is older than modern medicine. It's older than drug therapy. It is the oldest based philosophy of the body healing itself when it's what it needs that's ever existed on the planet, because it's real. That is the only way to heal. So going back to the science side of your question, of course, we'll all enjoy that journey of science unraveling, as it will continue to do by other researchers elsewhere, while we just keep it as a food supplement in mind. And what brings people is ultimately pain and suffering, and then results. That's it. And to answer Caroline's question, how did I find my way into natural healing, natural medicine? I was suffering. I used to cry myself to sleep at night, struggling to breathe with asthma. And I was 18, and a naturopath cured that. And I can say cure, and I'm very careful using the word cure, because I've never had it since, and I'm 66. So that propelled me into this entire world of natural healing and the mechanisms thereof. And what we've got right now is the ultimate pinnacle. I'm not surprised to hear that Dr. Caroline is now exclusively a redox educator. So am I. I came out of retirement pretty much to be a redox educator because of how powerful this product is and how it allows the body to heal itself. But before we move on, if I could ask a question of Dr. Caroline and others too, after they've finished answering your question, Jim, how do we determine how much of this we need?
Yeah. And I've got another thought on that as well, but I want to ask Lee. Lee, was the genetic study enough for you? And I know probably it wasn't, because you had to go a whole lot deeper, but how would you answer that? How much is enough? How much of the science, or do you go, well, that was a study you guys paid for and it really wasn't, you altered the results or whatever. I mean, how do you validate stuff like this?
Well, if you're a scientist, it's never enough. That's what your career is about, is getting more science.
That's
And
right.
when you look at this, you have to stand back and say, what is the preponderance of what we know telling us? If there's 1,000 or 10,000 or 50,000 articles out there, there isn't any one of them that has the entirety of everything that goes on in the body or the cell or even the nanoparticles that make up all the processes. It's just too much information. But you can stand back, and it's why I kind of approached this when I was doing my research and writing about connecting the dots. Science wants us to go straight from A to B, and wants us to go straight from A to C, and we can't always go that direction. We have to make these connections. Even just a good example from information that we all readily know about cholesterol and heart disease. We talk about cholesterol, and that's not even the whole truth. It's about oxidized cholesterol and all the little other particles with it. But we know enough to know that if generally speaking, if you got high cholesterol, you might have more risk for heart disease. That's just out there. We've been doing that for decades now. So if you came along with something that says, I can eat this magic fruit and it will reduce your cholesterol, you could then take it to the C step, ABC, and say, well, if I eat the magic fruit, it will make less heart disease. Well, science wants to prove that through a zillion studies and do it every which way to Sunday. And that's really the essence of what you're saying. And the angst that we have about this is because people are pressing us for that, because that's the kind of this quote unquote culture that they come from. And so the way I answer that is to say, well, we have some, at least you could call them preliminary studies. We have, thousands of case studies. Those all amount to something. We have a lot of anecdotal studies. And of course, if you're your own study, if you're the N of one, then it's you that can tell us the answer, and it's not that I can control all the variables in my life, but the bottom line is I want to be better. And I go back to this idea of, in this more natural methodology, our bodies weren't designed to need intervention. Where I'm grateful for intervention. It has a place in our life. But our body wasn't designed to heal with intervention necessarily. And that's where we have to back up and just ask a different question. And I think that's really the essence of everything we're talking about, is how do you ask these different questions and build upon that to connect all the dots. Carolyn, I'll let you go.
I think connecting the dots is really important, and that, I think, in many respects doesn't mean that you have to be a medical person or, a health practitioner. I think if you can use logic a lot of the time to connect the dots in an area that, we're not going to find that. I just want to reflect back to me. I think, there was a personal piece that I saw from that study that reflected what I was seeing in my usage of it with my clients. And so, to that point about being a digestive health specialist with enzyme therapy, what I saw was when people were using this, I could see the outcome was improved digestive enzyme function, right? Inhibition of the inability to absorb and digest food. And it translated into needing fewer supplements. And so that was another piece that told me that when we can get that communication going much better at a cellular level, that we're not going to need all the things that people traditionally throw at the body in a desperate attempt to say, well, I'll have this supplement for my adrenal fatigue and that one for my cognitive health and this one for my heart and that one for whatever, and how many people can relate to the fact that at home you look like a pharmacy? Right? Because I would have clients who would come in with bags of 27 supplements, and we'd have to go through and work out, were they even compatible with them in the first place, and did they need them? Most of the time, no. But to go back to that study, it reinforced for me that it was true what I was seeing. So that was cool. But we had someone who was in the medical field, actually working with the armed forces and doing a lot of governmental advice on how to control that. And I said to him from the study, I said, well, you know, a lot of people will say, well, that study was only done on 60 people. And you probably heard this, right? It's not a big study. And so, you know, what would be your comment? Because he was very familiar with studies, and I'm not the research scientist, so I was curious to see what his take was. And he said, no. He said, the reason that studies need to be done on large numbers is because the percentage improvement on whatever is being tested is not normally that huge. And so they need to replicate this process over, you know, hundreds, if not thousands of people to be able to say, well, X number of people all had this shift. And he said, you had a 100% shift on the people who were consuming the Asea Redox. He said 100% is 100%. He said, you don't need to keep going and repeating this because it's 100%. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. You know, I mean, I didn't need to validate it the way some people will try to invalidate it. It didn't matter to me because at the end of the day, I've used products that have got so much scientific research behind them, but I don't see the outcome in my practice. So, you know, we can get kind of caught up in that. Well, it's got to have a lot of double-blind studies, you know, therefore it's very valid. Well, that's fine. But if it doesn't translate into outcome for my clients, all the double-blind studies don't mean a thing. So like you, Ray, I'm much more interested in watching what happens with my clients. That's the end of it to me. I don't need to have all the other studies. I can just look at, you know, especially now 5 years into this, all of the outcomes for me are more than enough truth about what we have here.
Okay, so here, and then Dr. Ray asked, you know, how do you determine how much people should drink? My other dilemma, Carolyn, is what if people don't feel it? Because what we have is guaranteed to work every time the second that you drink it and it touches your body. Alan Noble will tell us that he has yet to feel it. And we get so caught up in, like, when I had my back discomfort and I popped my pills, I wanted to feel the relief, right? But with what we have, it's a whole different mind shift. It's shifting the whole thinking that we have not been accustomed to for how many years now? So how do you advise people, again, how much to consume, and then is it working?
Yeah, and to that point, it's because I think we apply the mentality of drugs, right? We take something, we feel it, and now we want to apply this and forget whether it's Asea, just in nutrition. This is the way people might have that mindset. You know, I always say, well, if we think about drugs are allopathic. They're forcing the body to an end result that they can guarantee because they've tested it. But the other side of it is, it's like me coming up and shoving you. Eventually we get irritated and we shove back. And the body does that same thing, which is why people's drugs cease to work and why they have to increase the levels and keep adding more and so on and so forth. When we work with nutrition, I look at it this: we come under the body and we come into the body and we support the body in doing what it's designed to do, which is to heal. So it is a different mindset, which is foreign for a lot of people. I think the beauty of this is that we know from clinical studies that this is totally non-toxic. So we all know that we can drink as much of it as we want and is necessary to help our body fight the fight that's going on below the surface and achieve the end result. So that's one thing. The other side of it is we can't be allergic to it because we're already making it as we speak, and it's not natural. It's not like a blueberry, and we often have that terminology. We love the benefits of the antioxidants from blueberries, but our body doesn't make that, right? That's natural. This is native. It's the same as lactoferrin, the hormone. It's the same as stem cells. They're all things that are within us. So we're just bringing an identical version and supplying more of it. But I think one of the important pieces is also that this is transparent to medication. So in other words, we can safely put someone on this and keep them on the medication that they're on and not be concerned about that, which, as beautiful as herbs are, there's a lot of contraindications with drugs and supplements that people do need to be cautious of, and why doctors ask so much more. So the big question, how much? Well, you know, age will play one piece of it, right? How much of it have you lost? I look at, how much and how active are you at doing things that support your lifestyle, the epigenetics of protecting ourselves. Do you drink enough water? Do you get enough sleep? Do you get enough exercise? Are you eating a healthy diet? Are you eating organically, or are you eating processed foods? So, what are you doing that puts into your body, or what are you doing that detracts from your body? Those are factors that are so variable with us. Do you come to the table with a challenge that you've had maybe for a while, because that didn't turn up overnight? And we look at the fact that cells shift about 8 years before they actually get diagnosed as a disease. So that's an 8-year lifespan going on below the surface. Now, can you feel your cholesterol changing? No, but it's taking place. Do you feel your blood pressure gradually increasing? No. Do you notice that your pancreas is no longer producing insulin as soon as it starts happening? No, right? Do we feel our bones thinning out as women until they look at it on a DEXA scan? No, right? We don't feel deterioration and damage taking place. And it's happening on a daily basis, right? I mean, just breathing in the oxygen creates oxidative stress, creates rusting on the inside, right? There is an accumulation of damage every single day. So I look at, are we trying to offset today and keep in a healthy place so that we can prevent the accumulation that would create disease? Are we trying to protect ourselves and address a challenge that we've had for a while? Right? And how bad is that challenge? So what our needs are is going to be varied from one person to another. And that is a lot of why some people can take something and they will feel it very quickly. And some people can take it for a while, because what's going on underneath the surface is a bigger war that the body is being supported in fighting, right? You're putting in troops to solve that problem. And you have to wait for the body to do the work to heal. And healing takes a while. If we think about the fact that we don't really change over blood work once through, and it takes 4 months to do that, right? So why do we think that we should drink something and, a month later, this thing that we've had for 5 years is suddenly going to be all resolved? I think that's also very unrealistic. But, we will typically start people with 4 ounces a day and then double up. If they're not beginning to see and feel changes, maybe within that first week or so. I mean, we know that about 15% of people are going to feel something in that first week, but 85% are not. That doesn't, as you said, Jim, that it's not working, because we know from those double-blind studies, it's 100% of us are seeing blood serum markers change. Do we feel those change? No, right? But we have to have patience and have to have realism in how healing takes place. If you want to squash a symptom, then go for a drug, right? If you want to actually support the body in healing, we have to be much more intelligent about this. And I think there is nothing more intelligent than watching how a cell mutates and how every cell detects when there's a problem and enables itself to go and find it and solve that problem.
What, you were kind of slow. I think you may have a slow internet.
Yeah, something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Second.
Some people start drinking the molecules and they have what they perceive as a negative reaction. Can you explain that real quick?
Yeah, I mean, if we have health issues, it's because those cells are not breathing the way they should, right? Nutrients should be in, junk should come out. I mean, that's the same as us, right? Oxygen in, carbon dioxide out. It's the same in the cells. And so when we are sedentary, when we're older, when we don't deep breathe, when we don't exercise, when we don't drink water, all of those things will compound those challenges. But sick cells lose the balance to be able to do this. When we rebalance a cell and it can start to release what it's storing, the stuff gets out into the blood system. I often have the visual like thinking of a prison. Right? solitary confinement is really like a cell that's not functioning. It has the bad stuff on the inside of the cell. Now, if we open the door by helping the system function, the bad stuff comes out. It's actually more of a challenge when it's out of the cell than it's inside the cell. And so people can feel that sometimes. You might feel a little achy, right? You might get some extra diarrhea. You might have a bit of a headache. You might have a little fever. You might feel like you've got a cold. That's not a bad thing. It means that your body's actually beginning to deal with the challenges of why you don't feel healthy. And it's really like living on one side of the fence or the other. If you're on this side of the fence and you're not healthy, you have to get to the other side of the fence if you want to be healthy. And that can be a short-term experience, rather like cleaning out our closets at home. We make a mess for a while and then it all becomes nice and clean and tidy. All right. And that's really what the cells are doing. They're cleaning them out, and the body should. If you hydrate well, all right, you're going to help eliminate that out of the system, and allow yourself to know that sometimes you might feel a little tired, but that's the body saying, I don't actually want you to do other things. I want to focus this energy on healing. Let me get through it, and then you'll be much more vital and ready to get going. And so it's not a bad thing. It's a sign that you're helping the body to achieve the process of moving towards a healing space and better health.
That's awesome. Good explanation. So why don't we, because we don't have a lot of time, chat about our nutritionals. I was watching your short video on biome, and you know, people taking it at the right time, and just the importance of having biome. So maybe you can talk a little bit about our line and why you enjoy it so much, why it's superior to maybe other things you've seen in the past. And you know, it does synergetically work with redox signaling. So that's why I like it so much, is that it's all about absorption, and we're absorbing all our nutrients by using our line. And maybe, because I know you're an expert on it, I love your blog about enzymes and stores.
Yeah, I think the beauty about what they've done is they've looked at the fact that our body's designed to work on food. It's not designed to work on synthetic versions of vitamins. And so, you know, they've gone to organic foods. They've gone to really high sourcing. So they've looked at the quality of the food, because it's not just about having the food in there, but what's the source? How's it manufactured? You know, how is that food raised and then turned into these ingredients? And they've done a beautiful job at partnering in terms of production to make sure that we have the highest quality of both range and actual materials. And so I love things like the source, because this covers this broad arena of things that are missing from our diets, because our food is so depleted nowadays. So, you know, you have everything from these superfoods that we need to the across the range of all of the minerals through whole food, to looking at the healthy oils, land minerals, sea minerals. And I love the enzymes, because everybody is very depleted in that, and they need that to help the body absorb what we have there. Biome is beautiful. They've done, again, this beautiful job of looking at, it's not just the quantity and how powerful those CFUs are, but actually the breadth and diversity of the probiotics in there to help support that gut system and our immune system. So I think they've just done some really intelligent work on what they've chosen and what they've put together, both in where they found their choices of food, and they've looked at the latest in the fields of nutrition, how the manufacturing plays into that. So, I mean, they've done a really great job, and I love it's not such a huge line, right? We have the source for that comprehensive support. We have biome for the gut health. We have omega. That's a phenomenal product with the omega-3, 5s, and 7s. And I will tell anyone, if you have a concussion, do at least 8 a day of those. You'll see very fast concussion turnaround with that, because I've used that multiple times in that way. And then we have LifeMax. I was just looking at LifeMax only this evening, and just looking at all the beautiful mushrooms that are in there. You know, the sources of what they've chosen are just so powerful to support cognitive health and cardiovascular, you know, eye and skin. So I think it's foundational. Works beautifully because it goes with the labor, which is the redox, and putting that material together, you know, to build healthy cells.
That's awesome. Your daughter, didn't she have a great result on extra omega after an injury?
Yeah, she had a very severe concussion when she fell down a set of stairs and hit her head on concrete. The OR told us later that they said she was lucky that she was alive just because of the angle at which her head hit. She had very severe concussion, and it was close to finals when she was in college. And I had been reading studies on the use of omegas and looking at pre and post injury in the NFL through Harvard studies, and the quantity of omegas that they were using to rehab the brain, to both prepare the brain pre-injury, and then if they had an injury to recover, and looking at brain analysis afterwards and being able to see that, you know, if they use these very high levels of omega-3s, they really recovered the brain to a pre-injury state. And I just read all this when she called me, and it was like, okay, this is what you're doing, 4 bottles a week, 4 bottles a month. I mean, 8 capsules a day. And 2 weeks was a phenomenal turnaround, really. And I've had that opportunity to suggest that to a number of people, and it's worked every time.
That's great.
Someone just asked a question about the vitamins that we have. How do you know they're going to work? And they have to work because they're all whole food, right?
Yes. You know,
So
I mean,
they cannot not work.
Right. I mean, our body's designed to consume and absorb nutrition through food, not through synthetic versions. If you have ascorbic acid, that is a synthetic vitamin C, right? Corn derived and not something that the body knows what to do with. It's not balanced like an acerola cherry. I mean, there's components like members of a family in all of these vitamins that are synergistic and need to be together. And there's some amazing studies that came out about vitamin C and how it was beneficial. And one study, at one point, it was beneficial. About 2 weeks later, there was a study saying it wasn't. It was really about the differences about whether you use synthetic vitamin C or whether you use a whole food vitamin C. And synthetic lodges in the heart and the brain and does a lot of untold challenges.
That's awesome.
What about self-performance? What are your thoughts?
I love cell performance. Yeah, I mean, so kind of goes back to that thing, right? With Redox, your body's going to take its time to show you what it's doing with it, right? And Redox has a mind of its own. The body's got its own priorities. It's going to direct them where it needs them. But these are beautiful because we get to feel the impact of the powering of Redox signaling into the cells and out through a specific approach, either with the energy or with the mind or with the mood. And, you know, this is, I think, a wonderful opportunity for people to experience quickly the power of Redox. You can take these powders, put them into water, put them into smoothies. You can drink them hot or cold. We love them hot. They're my substitute instead of tea and coffee and things. Yeah, I mean, the first thing in the morning we do energy and mind first thing as our hot drink, because in Chinese medicine you should actually put hot things into the body in the morning to stoke the energy field of the body and never drink cold stuff. So that's our hot drink in the morning. But we know that also this, you know, the mind is not just the immediate support for clarity and focus and concentration, but, you know, it has neurological benefits over the long haul. So this is cumulative. I don't know about you using this. I mean, this has had huge impacts with the teenage community who've been really challenged. They're having a lot of anxiety this last couple of years and where they're going with things. Yeah, in the mood.
That's mood. Okay.
The mood. And I don't know about you, but when we were beta testing them, I kind of looked at mood and went, well, I don't really need mood. You know, I'm not, I was thinking of it in terms of like, well, I'm not one of those people that needs lifting up. But it's not that, you know, it's, if you have overwhelm, if you have kind of just this sense of the life is just too crazy, it will settle and calm that. And when I was testing them singly, I would have said that this was the mind piece, because I took it one day and it was like, oh my goodness, talk about clarity of focus. So there's a huge benefit for all sorts of things. And again, you know, cumulative benefits. But this, the energy piece is nice because it's sustained intracellular support for more energy. It's not the hype of the up and the down that we get from synthetics. So it just powers beautifully. And, you know, we can take them a few times a day.
Yeah.
Cool.
Perfectly safe.
Ray, you want to add anything?
I'm sorry.
I didn't know if Ray wanted to add anything.
Oh.
Well, firstly, I wanted to explain to those who came later that I haven't lost the plot. I'm wearing the pearls because I'm standing in for Dr. Maureen. I've got the Pellegrini here, which I know to drink, but nonetheless, I'm doing my part, and I refuse to wear a tiara because that's a stretch too far.
That's true. Now, you have self-performance where you're at? Or not?
He brought it with him.
Bought them from Las Vegas.
Awesome.
I brought 10 each.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
Yeah. I'll be picking more up, including Cell Performance and the Via range in Australia next month. I go in about 3 weeks for the Asea event and to visit my family. So I will pick those up there. I can get some across from Malaysia. I'm not too far from Malaysia. I'm only a 1 hour, 15-minute flight. So I do visit there months as well. So, you know, we do our best around the world to get these products. As Caroline has said, these are life-changing. You know, the whole supplemental evolution has been a very interesting one because I've been involved in that for over 40 years. And the mood has definitely shifted away from the synthetics to the whole food sources. In natural healing philosophy, synergism, God packaged these foods, for example, they're done for a reason and they help each other to work. So your quercetins and hesperidins being separated out from the vitamin C and then synthetic forms of vitamin C, you're not going to have the same effect. Now, so she's explained that really well. So thank you, Caroline. That really gets that across to people. And what the body will do with these naturals is it will take what it needs and it will maximize, optimize protection and healing. And what's left will not be a problem. Some will be stored, the fat solubles, the water solubles, you will pee out on the day. So, you know, there's no excessive toxicity issue or disturbing pharmacological issues when you take them in these whole food forms that are made available by Asea to work perfectly with the Redox.
Lynn, can you kind of real quick, we've got a couple of minutes, we can go over it a little bit, but that the benefits are stackable, that the longer you stay on, frankly, on all of our technologies, it's not like you're going to take it and get better and quit. Could you please just kind of talk about the longer you stay on these, that the benefits get, frankly, better and better and better?
Are you directing that to me or was that?
No, I was asking Lee.
Oh, Lee, good. Look at it that way. Another voice.
Yeah, go on.
The book.
Well, that is an important concept, and it's important to be patient with it. You know, that even with the cell performance, the NMN, you know, the nicotinamide monodinucleotide in the MIND product is something that assists with the creation of NAD, which is important for activating sirtuins, which is important for DNA repair. So if I'm doing that inconsistently, infrequently, only when I quote unquote feel like it or remember it, it's like I'm not going to get the long-term benefit. We just talked about gut health issues, and you know, if you decide that you know, you're going to be hit and miss with eating good food, well, how can you expect that you're going to have a cumulative effect of health show up? And so the same thing is with this redox signaling. It takes time to detox. It takes time. I love that analogy of, you know, stuff going in and stuff coming out, food in, waste out. Well, if I can't get the waste out all the time because I'm not functioning or signaling properly, I may not feel it, but I might have a cumulative effect on the negative show up. So, I mean, it just stands to reason. I'm also going to respond to a question that's been asked a couple of times with regards to some specific, you know, neurological issues that our children sometimes have. We wouldn't address that specifically. That is a named disease condition. But I hope that you'll see that the answer is inherent in everything that we've been talking about, cell function. When cells work right, then all the downstream activities that cells perform in work better. And there still may need to be ancillary, you know, interventions or things done. But the premise here is we want the cells to work right. When they don't work right, then the downstream functions that they participate in aren't going to work their best. And again, there's an entire platform of other things going on in our life that are all multivariable. And so it's hard to do this. It's hard not to be reductionist in our thinking about, how this is going to affect a specific disease condition, because this kind of goes to another question. And I know Jim's just itching to ask, and that is, why this business model? And the answer is because if this was a drug, if they would have been gone ahead with the drug model, it would have been approved not just in this country, but in every country around the world for one specific thing that it was specifically tested for. And we wouldn't be able to talk about all the other cells and all the other problems that it might also benefit. We would have been prohibited. We would have been locked out of that. And so I'm really grateful for that we don't talk about the specifics, but we talk about the basement foundation, upstream issues that go with these nanoparticles signaling. Carolyn made the comment earlier that redox is not material. These aren't proteins that we're talking about. These aren't nutrients that we're talking about. They are reactive electrons, and they move around on individual atoms and tiny, tiny molecules to signal or to activate. That's the cell doesn't have a brain. It's not cognitively thinking, or it's not sentient. And so the only way it communicates or signals is by handing electrons and changing the polarity state or the positive negative energy in a state. And that's why we talk about balance. When a cell is in balance, then it's homeostatic. And when it gets out of balance, then it has these reactions, this adaptive response to put it back into balance. And when we're out of balance too long, we get sick, we get inflamed, we get heart this or brain that or whatever. And so I want to reduce it back to that really common foundational level. We just simply want cells to function. And that is what cell signaling is all about.
Yeah. Real quick, Carolyn, Carolyn, can you answer, because someone asked a question, and this comes up quite a bit, where the taste, the smell. Can you just kind of address that really quick, please, so that people don't, because if they open like multiple people we've had, Donalyn Dominguez is going to be on here in a while, in a couple of weeks. And when she drank the pool water, she said, you're nuts. I'm not going to drink that stuff, because she wasn't educated yet. And that's our biggest fear, is that if people don't comprehend what we have, they're going to, oh, God, I'm not drinking that. They're trying to kill me with chloride, So can you address that real quick?
That was me.
A lot of people.
I mean, I was not educated at that point. I mean, I was busy using the gel, but so when I tasted it, it was the same thing. I walked around the kitchen going, I haven't drunk chlorinated water for 30 years. Why the heck would I start now? And I actually called the company to send it back. I was just too lazy to send it back. So I gave it to my husband, and he had this amazing change in, under 2 weeks with his health. So it's a chloride molecule. It is an olfactory sense. It's not actually a taste, which we all think it is. And that happens to be one of the redox molecules. And it smells like this chlorine thing that, puts a lot of us off. But it's also, I've only ever had one product in the past 20 odd years that's been a barometer of your health. And I consider this a liquid barometer, right? The more you need this, the stronger it's going to smell. And as your body begins to absorb and use what it needs, and you get into a better sense of balance, that will go away. Now, for some people, that might be a day or two. For some people, it might be a week or two. It's all about you. And understand it's all about you, because otherwise, why could you have one bottle that would taste different to everybody, right? Some people will say it's salty. I've never tasted salt, right? Some people will say it tastes kind of the chlorinated piece. So there's different things. Other people will say it doesn't taste of anything at all. Well, how could that be from one thing that's exactly the same for all of us? Because it's a reflection of us. And will tell you I got into balance, but I had a stressful period at one point in my life a few years ago, and that smell came back. And I was like, okay, I need more, right? My body has got a bigger fight on. It needs a bigger set of an army and resources to do the work, and pay attention. This is really a cool product.
Yeah, we had people that go, I got a bad batch. I said, no, you got a bad something else. You better drink more.
Exactly.
Greg, did you want to say something to close out? Because you were like a good student raising your hand. So
I did. I just wanted to reinforce exactly what Dr. Lee was saying as well about this, because the world out there is focused on the disease mechanistic medical model, because that's what we grew up with, that's what we program with, that's how we think. So we're always going, at this point in time, we're always going to be asking about our disease and what will this do for that. As Dr. Lee very eloquently explained, the diseases come downstream. If you give the body what it needs, the most remarkable thing I find is that the body has the tools to completely heal itself of everything. That's why we see the miracles when we replenish Redox. Just imagine, it had the ability to take care of whatever problem. Doesn't matter what you wish to call it, but it needed the Redox at the right amounts, and then the nutrients thereafter. So
exactly.
That's why we see the miracles, because as soon as we give the body that fundamental nano-sized signaling molecule that affects every cell in the human body, all 100 trillion of them, all the 200 different types, all the alert systems switch on and take care of whatever that problem is. And that's just me saying exactly the same thing as Lee in a different way to help communicate that message. And Caroline too.
Yeah, thank you, Ray. And I can't help but think of Dr. Lee's wife, that she had 4 system failures, and her doctor had said, there's nothing I can do. If I alter one med, it'll mess up the other 3. And he saw the response back pretty quick, right, Lee? So, yeah. So, guys, we went a little bit over. And the reason we didn't bring up the business question is that's going to be dealt with next week. We have got someone that everybody's going to want to come back, and Ray, I think you're going to join us again. We got Danny Doyle, who you need to hear his testimonial, and you need to hear his business testimonial, and the thousands and thousands of lives that this one person, along with someone else who I'm hoping is going to have a good signal to join us, as Mal Sword as well. So come back, join us next Friday, and we will be back here. We're here every Friday. Please get back to the one that brought you on this call. Respect the one that did that. Don't go to Amazon. Do not go to Google to get research. You can go to Google Scholar, but you can go to PubMed, but don't go to Google. There are, believe it or not, there's people out there that don't want you to know about this. And we have all the evidence. Like I say, we have evidence that demands a verdict. So, guys, we want to thank you. Please get back, get on the product. And I'll guarantee you there is one way that even if you say you don't feel it, if you stay on it for 3 to 6 months consistently and correctly, and then you stop, you're going to know. You will know what it was doing for you, because the changes can be very minimal, but they're going to build up that you forget how you felt, a week ago. So, guys, with that, thank you so much. This recording will be up on redoxmatters.com under the videos tab within about 2 hours. Correct, Dr. Lee?
That's right.
Okay. So, guys, thank you, Carolyn.
Thank
As
you.
always, you're awesome.
Yes.
Ray, we'll see you back here next Friday. Danny Doyle and Mal Sword. And guys, thank you so much, and God bless.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
y'all. Have a great weekend.
Yep.